What's up, ladies and gentlemen? This is Bill Mack here with another edition of TNA Wrap Up. This is for the week of March 22nd, episode of TNA Impact Wrestling on Poptv. Bill Mack here to give you another, inside just my opinion on and my review of TNA Impact for this past week. Any kind of opinions, any news, anything that that comes to mind when discussing TNA. This is the review show here, and we had a really good show this week. It began, which we had the ending of last week's show. With Drew Galloway, he basically won. He cashed in his feast or fired. Shot, and he actually defeated Matt Hardy.After the triple threat match, and he became the new TNA champion. So we come into this week, and we start right off the show, right off with Drew Galloway as his music hits, and he's standing out there, and he's real happy, and it shows the recap of last week, and he's real happy about that, and he's telling the crowd, he was so happy to become the TNA World Heavyweight Championship. He was talking about so much how he liked to basically had worked for 15 years, from the lowest places, and he worked very hard. He said, I'm not the type that things were handed to me. I'm not the type that had the silver spoon in my mouth. I had to work hard. And, just watching him, it seemed like he truly was glad to be a champion, which back when he was with the other company, he didn't get that big of a run. And they really didn't see that big a desire after him. But I think him being in TNA and them being able, if they will push him to be one of their top guys, that's the kind of talent. You said, well, he's not new talent. No, but he's new in the eyes that they can actually do something with him. I'm all for them taking talent that may have not worked out unless it's their own and trying to push it, because sometimes they were always known for getting guys that were well established in other companies, Sting and Hogan and Ric Flair and Christian and all these people that were in these other companies and guys that were pretty much, and then sometimes ones they were kind of washed up and they just happened to come on. Our TNA was really bad for that, and my thing was if they would just develop, even if they got WWE guys that weren't basically top stars that, TNA could actually do something with. It's kind of like me with Christian. When Christian was Christian Cage in TNA, a few years ago, they made him their world champion, and that was long before he was the champion on SmackDown. And I actually like Christian's theme and stuff, and how he was in TNA, much like I talked to Bullet B a while back. He and I were discussing, the differences in music and how they were used. And like me, I think Kurt Angle's TNA theme is better than his WWE theme. And I'm not just marking out here. I'm not that kind of a person, but giving that perspective and seeing it and trying to give it a chance to me. WWE is by far, the biggest company, but if they would just mold these guys and they've got the roster space, they've got the time to do it. They just hadn't done it. But TNA just hasn't had creative, and that's their thing now. Here they have Drew Galloway. They can take him as being a legitimate guy. EC3. EC3 would be to me, their top guy, even though he didn't make it in Tough Enough. I feel like he's the perfect guy because he does have the look. He does have the direction. He does have that chance to say, well, you could look at him and say, he's a young champion, but you could see him as being a champion. That's what TNA needs, is more guys like that mixed in with a few veterans, but I wouldn't have more veterans in TNA than I would the new guys, because like all of them like even WWE now says, you got to develop the new guys, because these older guys that are in these companies, if they're not, you tend to have the tendency to go back to them if they need help. And I'm like, well, just use your young guys, mold them, give them the storylines, put them there. It may take a while, but give the fans a chance to like them, And Drew Galloway, he came in a few months ago, and he was kind of saying the right things. He was talking about how, basically he was there. He was there for professional wrestling, and what just entertainment, and how he wanted to wrestle for the fans and let it be pleasing for the fans, and not just some wrestlers going in there and all about them. But he spoke like he was trying to reach out to the fans and for the fans to kind of grasp somebody that can say like, hey, This guy understands what we want. This guy's the kind of guy we need to fight for us, and basically, basically someone that we can get behind that has our best interest and what we want to see and the kind of things we want to see and the kind of people we want representing us. Someone that can go out there and do it. And Drew Galloway started that off, and I'm glad to see now that he has gotten that championship, which it's good to surround it. You had EC3 a while back with the championship. You've had guys like Kurt Angle with it for a while. Sting had it for a while. All these other guys, but it's good to see guys like Drew Galloway, EC3 have the title, and those young guys, and they can make a mark of it. But you have to get behind them. So he's happy about that. And he thanks the fans, for his support and standing behind him all these months. And he was talking about how that he was going to do the best he could with the TNA title and bring it back to prominence. Make something special out of it. Because I guess he was just trying to tell the fans, I want it to be in a new direction. I want to take this title and I want to elevate it up. I know it's kind of low right now, but I think it would be great if I was able to elevate it up. I wanted to have that name recognition. I want to make it proud. I want people to know that I'm worthy of being the champion and that this is a legit title and I am a legit champion. And for people to know, and I respect that. I mean, TNA for their own creative problems have really had a lot of issues over the years, as I have mentioned in last week's wrap up. They just have that tendency to do their own thing, and the creative has really come down on them. They could do what they could want to do better. I mean, you look at the writing that they've had years ago. You look at the writing WCW used to have, and you look at Ring of Honor, and you look at all these organizations, and you think if they can just get the right people in place, they could actually make it, excuse me, into a bigger brand than what it is. You just have to take the time, get the right people in there. You don't want people that are in there that are going to wreck it, because we've seen companies and people come into previous companies and really drag it down. And TNA is basically now, some say, already in the bottom of the barrel. And while that may be true, if you can get another TV channel, get the right backing financially, get the right creative people in there that have been around wrestling for years, that people that are even of today that know what fans are looking for and producing that kind of product. If you make the product and you build the product, people will come to it. If you cook something to eat, people that are hungry will come after it. And that's what you basically have to do. So I'm just glad that he won it. I hope that he will keep it for a little while, and whatnot. But we see that he's very happy. It seems like to have the title. But as usual, as you would have it, he's going to be interrupted, and then all of a sudden, Matt Hardy's music hits, the Matt brand. And he comes out along with, he's got Rockstar Spud with him. He's got Tyrus with him, and he's got his wife Rebby Scott, which she's a beautiful woman, along with him. And Matt, typical heel fashion, he's going to run down Drew Galloway. He's going to talk down to him and tell him that, he said, look, you're nothing but you're spineless. He said, you're a coward, you're a thief, and you've done all these things. And he said that you've committed a felony. And he said, he said that, look, I've been the one that stood out here last week. I was the one that survived a triple threat for 30 minutes and basically a handicap match, which we know it wasn't because we seen it. We talked about it last week. It was kind of a back and forth match between all three of them, but a really good match. So he goes to put on, and it's a handicap match, and I had to do all these circumstances, and here you are, Drew Galloway, coming out of nowhere, and all of a sudden you taking that and stealing that from me. Taking it from me, and Drew told him back. Drew said, look, he said, look, I didn't steal anything from you. I didn't take anything from you. He said there was a lot of chaos going on, and he said that all I did was take advantage of the situation. And and that's what I understand is, that's what happens usually in triple threat matches, folks. If we've known nothing else to watch triple threat matches, we have seen something always happens in a triple threat match, especially with the title, especially with the circumstances, because TNA has their feast or fired, and he had that briefcase the whole time. So whenever it got time for him to cash it in, to for his opportunity, it was at his beck and call. And typically, when you have these matches where you see so many these wrestlers, all three of them are basically pushed to the limit. They fought each other. They beat each other up. They're down, and one that just happens to win is the one that has just enough strength to pull it out. But then, lo and behold, when that guy comes in and takes that opportunity, and if he can cash it in, he's going to do it. There's no circumstances to that. It doesn't say you can't do it after a match. So Drew Galloway says, "Look, I just took advantage of the situation and what it was, and here it is. 1, 2, 3. He pins Matt Hardy. He wins the TNA title, and Matt's all upset. And Matt says, "Look, I do got a rematch." And he said, "If you don't allow me my rematch, then the Matt Hardy brand, we're all gonna destroy you. We're gonna take you down, and we're just gonna destroy you, per se." And Drew Galloway, he didn't back down. He just dropped the mic, and he's got ready. He's like, "Come on, ready for them to attack." So he's like, "I'm not going to back down from you." For them to come on, and that's good to having that champion, even though you have Cyrus there, and you have Spud there, you have Matt Hardy there. He's not backing down. He's telling them, "Come on, I will fight you regardless." So we see that all this is happening, and then the good thing is all of a sudden we hear Matt's brother Jeff's music hit. Jeff comes down, and Jeff is telling him just like it. He said, "Look, Matt," he said, "you lost last week." He said, "I did." He said, "And so I feel like since you lost and I didn't, I should get a shot at this title. I should be the one to get this." And Matt looks back at him and says, "Look," he said, "you need to stay out of family business." He says, "And you know what? You need just to go and stay out of my career." So, that typical heel that he's playing and getting that, because, the Hardy Boys are one of the most beloved tag teams of the modern, I would say, Attitude era type stage, because they were the ones that went out there and put their bodies on the line. They were Team Extreme, and it was fans wanted them together. You didn't want to see one separate. You always like to see them together as the Hardy Boys. So you made it in there, and to see them now arguing and seeing him tell Matt basically, "I want you to stay out of my career." He says, "Why don't you go back, Jeff? Why don't you just go back? Why don't you go make some more music?" Because he's ranking off of Jeff. Jeff has made some of his music, his entrance music before, was him singing, and he does make some music. And he says, "Why don't you just go ride your so-called redneck dirt bikes?" And he said, and just go ahead and break the rest of your bones. Now that to me, folks, was a big hit to Jeff, because we remember Jeff has been hurt. He just recently got back from when he got hurt on that cage. He's been hurt, which when you wrestle that kind of reckless lifestyle that Jeff and the Hardy Boys have wrestled, whether it's jumping off of ladders, jumping off stages, jumping off chairs, all these kinds of things that they have done, it can take your toll, and you wouldn't imagine how many broken bones these guys have had. But he said, "Why don't you just go on, ride your dirt bikes, and just go ahead and break the rest of your limbs?" And Jeff says, "You know what?" He says, "I'm not going anywhere until I get my title shot." So we see a feud there starting to build a little bit and tension between the brothers, because over this side of the title of Matt having it and it doing something to him, where Jeff wanting it and trying to establish, as like Drew Galloway said, he wanted to do it. They both want the title, but it's their own different ways of going about getting it and how they're presenting themselves. Because now we see a split between the Hardy Boys yet again, to where Matt in his devious ways and how he's done, and Jeff always right with the crowd, always going after and trying to perceive after that title, because Jeff is in TNA one of their legitimate singles competitors that is always very popular with the crowd. So we see them two stare down. So we come back out and we see Eric and Bram come out, and they start attacking Jeff on the floor while Matt Hardy and all his guys with Spud and Tyrus and them jumping on Drew Galloway that while they're in the ring. So we see that they end up trying to set Eric Young and Bram, and we do, folks, not mentioning we do have some news when you get a chance about Eric Young that's just happened this past week, so that you would like to know, and I'll mention a little bit about that. But Eric Young and Bram have brought a table out there to set up because they're going to try to put Matt through it. Which typical whenever you got a Hardy Boy somewhere, somebody's going to get a table or something and try to put them through it. But ends up EC3 and Matt are trying to fight back. I mean, there's only two of them, and you see they're going against Eric Young and Bram and Tyrus and Matt Hardy, so you know the odds are basically well against them. And so then it's like a 2-on-5. So then all of a sudden, guess who comes out? Mr. EC3 comes out and he has a chair and he clears out every single one of the heels out of the ring with a chair. He tries to run out he looks at Jeff and they're talking, and I like how they must have got some chemistry because they're talking more often, and I guess they're trying to rub Jeff to rub off on EC3 to give him that extra for him being a face now. But it's good to see him communicating, and Drew is telling him, he says, "Look, I know you deserve a shot, but you know what? I deserve a shot too." He said, "Look, I've lost the belt twice without being pinned. 2 times without being pinned, and I want to get a shot at this if Drew accepts it, because that's what I want to do. And I can understand that, because how do you feel when taking a title, winning it, and then losing it when someone else ends up gaining it and you didn't even get pinned? I mean, I can pretty much understand that, because that's what happened the last few times. Remember what happened with Matt before? It's just a very sad situation to see that happen. But EC3 is letting them know, look, I've had the belt twice, and both times I've lost has been when I hadn't got pinned, which he makes a valuable argument where you could say, well, he does make a point. I can kind of understand that. So that's a good thing about the situation, is having those three setting it up in the situation, so you can see some potentially leading on. So you have everybody out there. So we see now. So if that isn't enough, the Miracle comes out. The Miracle Mike Bennett with the lovely Maria. They come out and he said, "Look, I think I should get my shot." He said, "Everybody and I feel like I should get my shot at it, since I was the last one to pin EC3. And he's the champion. He said, I should feel like I need to get the shot." So then he's going at it. So now we have the ring full. You have so many guys in there after one title. You think about it. You have um, Drew Galloway, the champion. You have Matt and Jeff in there. You have EC3 in there. You have Tyrus. You have Rockstar Spud. You have Bennett. You have Bram. You have Eric Young. You have all these guys in there vying after one. So there's so many people, and the great thing is, and then it says, Dixie, all of a sudden Dixie Carter comes out. So she's going to make some sort of announcement, a match tonight sometime. So sure enough, she comes out to the ring, or she stands out there on the outside, and she says, "Look," she says, "I've come out here," and she says, "Every single one of you that's in that ring has done nothing but created chaos. Every single one of you." And she says, "I don't, and since every one of you in this ring, your ring, thinks that you deserve a shot, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have you all enter into a gauntlet match later on. And the winner of that gauntlet match faces Drew Galloway." Pretty fair. So you've got a gauntlet match, and you've got an EC3, and you got all the guys in there in this ring with the equal chance and opportunity. to win this. It kind of reminds me of like a Royal Rumble type match, with the way it's set up and all. But sure enough, that's what she does. And then she said, they were all glad, and everyone's like, "This enough? That's what'll work." So they go to commercial. They come back. Beer Money. Now this is funny. Beer Money is they're in the back, and they're going over because they've opened tonight a open challenge to TNA tag teams and past or present apparently. And they were naming off some names, and then James Storm read, and James Storm mentions, "How about America's Most Wanted?" Now, TNA fans, you remember America's Most Wanted? That was the first original tag team that James Storm was in with Wildcat Chris Harris. Now, to me, like I've stated in the past episode, that America's Most Wanted is one of my favorite TNA teams. Which I know they don't have a whole lot, but to me, that was one of their tag teams, and I thought they had a cool gimmick in the early years of TNA with James Storm and Chris Harris. Had an awesome tag team. That's why I like James Storm being a tag team guy rather than just being a singles guy, because he does really well with promos and stuff during tag teams. So, and it's funny because he says, "Hey, what about America's Most Wanted?" And Bobby Roode said, "Did you know that if that was the case, that you would have to wrestle for both teams during this match?" And Star says, "Yeah, that would be awesome." So it was just funny that he had said that and brought back their old team, because typically they don't bring a lot of their old teams like that up, especially if people aren't there. But it was just funny that he brought back, because I like both teams. I like Beer Money and I like America's Most Wanted, and a lot for it because it was Cowboy Chris Harris back when it was America's Most Wanted, and now Bobby Roode with James Storm in Beer Money, two awesome tag teams. And it would have been great, because I mean, if you could have done that, it would have been awesome to see how that would have pulled itself out. But anyway, Bobby Roode, he's another one. Have some comments on basically whenever we get back. But yeah, it's just amazing how he brought that up and what happened is. So we see this. So they go to commercial, and we cut back. Michael Bennett is standing in alongside Maria, and he's saying how he's going to kill two birds with one stone. And he's going to go through TNA's finest, and he's going to save the TNA world title, tonight. And Maria, he says, "Doesn't matter what number I choose," and Maria says, "Don't worry about it. The number will choose you." So we kind of see that little bit of foreshadowing maybe down later on in the night. But Maria talks a little bit about Gail Kim, because they have an upcoming match pretty in the night. Maria does, against Gail Kim, which we remember last week. She rolled Gail Kim up. About the tights and stuff. So we see what's going to happen this upcoming week with that feud happening. So Beer Money is up next. Their Beer Money is in the ring, and they're waiting to see who their opponents are. Well, first comes out, you see Rob E come out. Rob E. And Robbie E's talking about tag teams and how they had this challenge and all, and he couldn't think of someone to get better, to someone that likes the sun, that to tan up with him and all. And then all of a sudden, out, lo and behold, guess who comes out to be his partner? Jesse Goddard's. And remember, Jesse Goddard's was part of the Bromans, and so I guess now the Bromans are back together again, which good. That's another legitimate tag team that are better as a tag team. They're trying to split these guys up. It's good to put them back together and have them in this challenge, I think, and because they put on pretty decent matches, the Bromans do, and I'm glad to see them finally deciding to put them back. So as we look over and see what's going on in the match, and like I said, it was a very good match, back and forth, a lot of double teams, a lot of tag team action in the match, and the end comes up when we see that Beer Money ends up hitting the DWI on Robbie for the win, and pretty soon to get that, the eventual 1, 2, 3 on that. But it's good to see that happen, and good to see them, because I feel like if they're going to do this tag team open challenge, I guess they're trying to piece some more tag teams together. And in this challenge, kind of like when John Cena done the open challenge with the U.S. title, he was trying to get the so-and-so one of these mid-card guys to get a chance, and knowing anybody had a chance at it. So they're trying to do that with the tag team titles. And I think having the Bromans back, having them back as a tag team, is a good thing, because it's good to have more tag teams and develop that tag team division. Since you've had a lot of the people in tag teams, especially like the Dudley Boys that have went back to WWE and Team 3D, they left. So you see, it makes them thinner, so they have to gather and get these back. But I've always liked the Bromans better as a tag team than having Jesse Goddard and having Robbie E split up in singles competition. So good for them for putting them back. So pretty decent match, as we see them raise their hands at the end. Then we come back and we see the Decay, which is Crazy Steve and Abyss and Rosemary. And remember last week, Dave Richards was they had jumped him and they had beat him down last week in the back, because by the Decay. And so they cut a promo to Eddie Edwards, and they said, look, last week your partner got caught in a bear trap of life, and he said, look, you're going to be punished, you're going to get hurt too. So if I were you, Eddie Edwards, I wouldn't challenge either one of us for a match. And then he goes out. But then we eventually, we eventually know what's going to happen there. We know there's obviously going to be a match. So then we see Eric Young and Bram, and they're trying to use a number, and then all of a sudden they see Willow over there, and it's just a little silly part in that with Willow. So we always know when Jeff Hardy's back, much like last week, Willow's going to be back as well. So maybe Willow might have I don't know if Willow's going to have his shot in it or not, which he won't, because he's not in the gauntlet. But I imagine down the road he might have his part in something like that for the title. If Jeff's not, just depends on how he does. I'm like, boy, Jeff sure can have his creative control over his character to have Willow come back. We all know how weird, psychotic Willow and that laugh that he does with those black and white outfit on and whatnot. So that's what it does. But we see, we cut back to the ring, and we see Eddie in the ring. And Eddie said, look here, I don't care whichever one of you I face, but I'm going to fight somebody in this ring tonight. So all of a sudden we see come out, Crazy Steve comes out. And I'm thinking, I thought it was going to be Abyss to begin with, but it was Crazy Steve to come out with Rosemary. And we see this, and we see in the beginning that Rosemary, through this whole match, is doing nothing but trying to distract. Well, it's grabbing his leg, doing this, doing that. She just becomes an early distraction. And by doing that, it gives Crazy Steve that advantage, because Crazy Steve's a little guy, He's a little guy. But we see that through her distraction and how valuable she is to the Decay, she can provide that distraction, which is a classic good. I know she's not a manager, but it's good to have someone in there like that. I miss the old managers, and that was the thing. They don't have managers anymore. You have, like, I granted, Paul Heyman is with Brock, but that's only because Brock can't talk. I mean, he can talk a little bit, but he can't cut promos. He can't draw heat like Paul Heyman can. You don't see a lot of those managers anymore. Managers like Bobby Heenan used to get in there and they would interfere with the matches and cause, and that was funny. We'd laugh at when they got their butt busted, because it's like, serves you right for getting in there and trying to interfere. But you don't see that as much anymore. So to see her interact in this match showed that old manager style, where she just tried to distract and give her wrestler the upper hand. And that's what typical a manager will do, is they'll do whatever they can to basically gain the advantage over whoever they're facing. So that their wrestler will have the advantage and be able to come out on top. So throughout the whole match, we see that happen. And the ending comes where Crazy Steve is running full force, and Eddie Edwards gets out of the way, and when he does, he knocks Rosemary off the ring. And as he looks to make sure she's all right, Eddie rolls him up for a pin. You're the face. Why would you have to roll up Crazy Steve for a roll up pin? Why didn't you just hit your move on him and pin him. I mean, roll ups are kind of cheap. It's kind of like if you have a jobber rolling up a mid to high card guy and getting the match like that, but not seeing someone of that stature getting a roll up pin on Crazy Steve. But be it as it may, we see Eddie Edwards picks up the win. So we go back and we come back, and Maria, she's in the back, and she is cutting a promo again on Gail Kim. And she's saying that she's going to redefine the women's championship, how she pinned Gail Kim last week, and how she was going to do all this and that. They're trying to build some heat for the match. So, we're going to still see that later on in the night. As I said earlier, we see once again Jeff and EC3 are talking, and and he said, "Look, I was going to, you could have had the chance." He said, "But getting the whole cavalry had to come in here and stick their nose and want rematches and want matches and all this stuff, and they were talking, and then they because they were there to draw their numbers, and then it just shows them both when they do draw their number." They kind of look, but they don't say anything, and you can't tell which number they have because the numbers won't run for what I read 1 through 9. So there was only 1 through 9 that you had dealing with. So they both really didn't say nothing, so you really couldn't give away on what they were kind of going after. So we'll have to see later on in the night as we talk about it, just where each one comes in. So now what we've been wanting for, the Maria comes out and she's in the ring and she's standing across from Gail Kim. And before the match starts, she goes into this mode where she says, "Look, I beat you last week. I'm not going to go after you again." She says, "I see somebody else that's up and coming." And she says, "I know people that have a better shot and better chance." So what she does is she calls the Dollhouse members out, and she has them all come out to the ring. And she's trying to be sneaky because Maria, she's always very sneaky and got things up her sleeve. But she comes out there and she calls them out there and she talks to them, and it's Rebel and it's Marty and it's Jade and all three of them, and she says, "Look, you're so much better than I know you're better at being individuals and singles, and you need to try to stand out individually than just being a group where you're not able to show as much." So as we see them get into it and understanding, we see them three and she says, "Well, what we'll do is, since I'm not going to wrestle, then what we'll do is we'll have a number one contender spot." Wow, who didn't see that one coming? Just make a number one contender spot on the fly. I mean, you gotta love wrestling doing that, folks. So we see them basically. It's all three of them, and it's actually a decent match. I would actually say that it was a decent match. I mean, they all went against each other. Each one of them got a certain amount of time, some good kicks and stuff. It wasn't as bad, as one would think a match. Which, like I said, it's not the Bellas, so you can only think that it's going to be a little bit better than having the Bellas in P mode, where you actually have to go to the bathroom. But it was actually a decent match, And what happens is Jade ends up getting the win by giving Marty an STO on top of onto Rebel, and she ends up covering them both for the win. And then now we see that Jade is the number one contender. No more Dollhouse, and that it was typically going to happen because you look what happened, folks, in the history of the Dollhouse here recently. You had Taryn Terrell, which is a very beautiful woman. She was the one that made up the Dollhouse. She was the leader, and you had all of them together. Beautiful woman, beautiful. But then she found Christianity, and so she became a Christian. So she didn't come back to TNA, and so then since she didn't come back to TNA, the Dollhouse didn't really have a leader because none of the other girls were strong enough to lead. So we see then Awesome Kong, when she comes back briefly, she for some reason becomes leader of the Dollhouse, and what she does is says things like that they need strength, a strong leader and whatnot, and so she ends up being the Dollhouse leader. So then after she ends up in a fight backstage with Matt Hardy's wife, they end up letting her go. So now here we see the dollhouse yet again. Three women, no leader. What are you to do? But now you kind of got Maria, I guess, going to kind of be in the kind of watching out mode over them, but she has them all be singles competition. And like I said, it was a pretty decent match with that situation. But there's no more appearances now. There's no more dollhouse. So we'll see that as more as what happens later on to come. Just depends on how well these three women can do on their own as knockouts, or whether they end up having to go back, as a team. So we'll see about that. But after that, we see Jeremy Borash, and he's joined, of course, by the Matt Hardy brand, which is him and Tyrus and Spud, and they're all drawing numbers. And it's funny because and they're groveling. Matt was groveling. Everything's a conspiracy and da 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 da. So then he looks at his number, and you can tell he just doesn't look happy. Doesn't say what it is. Just you can read his body language and tell he's not happy. Then they flash over to the Tyrus. Tyrus, same thing, same expression. He knows it's not good, whatever it may be. So then we see him look at it, and him kind of like gave that look. You're kind of like, well, it's not a good look, so he must not got where he wants. So then finally you look at Spud. Spud is smiling. Spud is happy. It seems like he's very happy with his number. So you see Matt over there looking at him. He's like, he's not. If he's only happy, that must be a good number. I'm going to take it from him. So then what happens? He goes out and he takes it away. So he takes it away, and he gives Rockstar Spud his number. So we don't quite know what the numbers are or what their numbers may be. Like I said, it's a little bit different to tell. So then we see as we go to a stage in the back where a moment, and it's kind of weird in explaining it. It deals with Grotto and Shera and Odard, and they're talking about loaning each other money or whatnot. I didn't quite get that, and having back next week having a party or something, because Grotto, you remember last week Grotto was in that ladder match with Eli Drake, and remember he ended up beating Eli Drake and getting his contract back, which Eli Drake, for some reason, wasn't on this episode, which is very sad because I enjoyed Eli Drake. But he may end up being back next week, and hopefully they can put him a good heel, as a bad guy. So that's what I feel like is going to end up with what they're doing. So as we see that in their argument, so I just skip over that. And here we go, folks. This is the main event for the evening. We see that it's the gauntlet, and we see that Drew comes in, and Drew's talking about the title, and he's not going to really be in there long. He's just going to talk, and then he's going to leave. So then he ends up talking a little bit, and then first two Lashley comes out. Lashley comes out, and him and EC3 begin to fight. So we see that must be number one and number two. So they're fighting down, and they're until the clock counts down, and lo and behold, number three, and then Spud comes in at number three. So we see Matt was coming in at third to begin with, but now it's Spud. So no wonder Matt was kind of upset that he got the high number. He wanted the low number, so he then switches with Spud. So we see that Spud goes in at number three, and then we see the Miracle, and so then they're all three, since their heels working over EC3, and I mean EC3 gets beat down the whole match during this whole gauntlet happening. So we see EC3 gets beat down. Then lo and behold, the clock goes off, and then at number 5 comes in. Then we see Miracle Mike Bennett come in. He comes in at number 4. And then all of a sudden after him, they fight a little bit, and then they're going on. Number 5 is old EY, Eric Young. He comes in, but instead, he actually starts working on Spud and working on Michael Bennett, which wasn't what you would think. You would think he would be working on EC3 and helping these other guys out. But no, he's going to go over and do his own thing, and he's going to start working over them to begin with. So all of a sudden, number 6 comes out, the odds are just getting better for a champion, because Drew, all of a sudden we see EC3 get attacked by Tyrus, excuse me. Tyrus comes in at number 6. So now you've got the whole Matt Hardy brand out there against EC3. So you see how this is going so far. So that's why I said he's going to get jumped, and he's going to get, they're going to all jump on him. So that's just what was happening here. But then all of a sudden we see coming out after him, Bram is in at number 7. Now they're fighting all over the place, trying to get situated and figuring out just exactly, and the action spread out, which is good. Slows it down a little bit, because you imagine some of these guys have been there for a while, and we see that that's what's going on here, and we see that that Bram is out there, and then all of a sudden, remember last week when Lashley went out there, he attacked Borash and he attacked the Pope. Well, the Pope didn't forget that. And as soon as the Pope gets close to Lashley, he jumps over the table. And then they start wailing on each other. They start fighting each other, and they end up all the way in the back fighting. And then, lo and behold, number 8, Mr. Matt Hardy himself, he gets number 8. So we see he's working on EC3, of course. And then there's just a lot of punishment that he has taken in this match, which is obvious, because you want the fan favorite to be the one that gets the most jumped on, so that he has the most sympathy, which people would cheer for him the most. So we see that happening as well. And then Bennett comes out. We see Bennett come out, and and so now we have everybody basically that's in. So there's a lot of stuff going on. Um, he ends up, and it's going a lot of back and forth, where it's just a good match, and we see that EC3, he wipes out Matt and Bennett with a double clothesline. Bennett tries to hit him with the Ace Crusher, and then EC3 eliminates Bennett with a clothesline, and then it pulls the Sid stick and grabs EC's arm until Matt comes in from behind, and he ends up eliminating EC3. So we see Matt down to that. So now we see that everybody's basically broken down, weary, unable to move. It's been a long match. And then it said that Drew, it says what happens is when the dust settles down and it's all clear, there's only 2 that remain, Matt and Jeff Hardy. So now we see your main event is set up. We have Matt Hardy on one side. We have Jeff Hardy on the other. Which, folks, we kind of figured that was what was going to happen. I mean, maybe we would have thought my EC3 may have done it, but it just would have been weird. But having another brother versus brother match would be pretty decent. They should put on a good show. I don't expect anything less than that is a good match with them. So we see that EC3 eliminates the Miracle with a clothesline, and then he pulls the Sid's trick and grabs EC's arm, and Matt comes in and eliminates EC3. So now EC3 is gone. So one of my guys is gone down for the count. And it tells us here that it all boils down Hardy versus Hardy. We've seen this. The one that says headline Hardy versus Hardy, Jeff versus Matt. The IC title is on the line. And typical match. I said it was a good match, typical match, because you have Jeff Hardy and Matt Hardy, the Hardy boys, doing a lot of daredevil type things. And when I watch all of it, I could tell from the intensity and how this match was, and seeing what went on with it and the character that it built, and his understanding and knowing that it's good for that to happen when things like that go on. So we see that that happens, and now it's a good back and forth match. Like I said, a lot of high spots in, a lot of a lot of things, the tables and the chairs, all this stuff was involved in the match, and it's just funny that we see all this damage, and we know that it's basically it's nothing but to help the fans, to appease the fans, and that's just exactly what it is. So A pretty good match between them two, and it was a typical Hardy style. A lot of flips, a lot of swanton bombs, a lot of different stuff. Of course, they kept kicking out, which of course is tradition. And then we see that Matt and Jeff are two different places, and we see that they are going fighting each other, and we see that basically um, Jeff Matt goes to take Jeff and get him and suplex him in the ring, but Matt has a different or Jeff has a different um, ending to that. He wants to take, and so instead of him being flipped in the ring, he takes Matt, suplexes him over the top rope, and he lands on the floor. So by him landing on the floor, that's the end of it. So we see him posing. He's very happy. He's still and he's knows he's won. He knows he's the number one contender. And then we see Drew Galloway come to the front of the ramp, and we see him um, basically holding the title up, and Jeff kind of staring. So then you see the backwards and forwards interaction, and you say, okay, this is going to be our TNA title match. We're gonna have Jeff Hardy, you know, and he's going to be in it, and I mean it's gonna be a great match against Drew Galloway. So, that's the way it ended. I thought it was a pretty good, decent TNA show. I pretty much enjoyed it. Like I said, some of the things like the grotto thing I didn't quite understand. I think the whole Maria thing and them was wasting time with just focusing on her when they need to do more on those she's against. So I will kind of say something about that. But I think overall it was a pretty good episode here, and a build up towards the next pay per view or the next special that they do on television. The only, and I really and thoroughly enjoyed that. So, I just hope that it continues on getting better and better, because that's all in what's going to happen. So just know that and just a little bit of a news flash here, folks. As recently as released this week, the both Eric Young and Bobby Roode are both have been asked for their releases from TNA, and they have both received them. It come to a shock to a lot of people, and you feel kind of badly that it's happened, like it has. But like I said, that's just the way it goes. But they wish them the best, and hopefully they can the best in their future endeavors. Um, TNA's rating for this week, folks. TNA rating time actually went up a little bit. It says that this week's TNA episode featuring Jeff Hardy winning the Gauntlet match drew 331,000, and this is up from last week's 307,000. So a 24,000 viewer pickup. Pretty good for the semi-live episode with Drew Galloway's world title win. So not bad, not bad. 24,000. That's good if they can just keep building that up and keep going on with it. You could see so much more with them in that situation. That's what kind of gets me a little bit is you don't see it like you should see it, and you should. And me, I believe in that. I believe in that, and whatnot. So that's just the way it goes. But I hope you've all enjoyed this episode of TNA Wrap Up for March 22nd, 2016. If you can, and you like it, hit that like button and hit the subscribe button. And if you don't like it still, hit the like button and hit the subscribe button. Send this out to all your friends. I'm looking for subs. Sub to me. Look forward to it. I will continue on bringing you more TNA updates, more reviews of TNA Impact on Poptv, and heading on to the night. So I wish every one of you a great, wonderful night. This is Bill Mack and TNA Wrap Up. Sign off.